This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're starting the meeting for the CPA committee. Can you go over where we are with the budget?
Do you want to share it?
Yeah, well, stop sharing for a minute,
Please.
please. Sorry.
Got a mom at a table. Like,
No,
I feel like
I'm
I'm telling my children.
I have to get it up just a second. Would it be in CPA compounds project update?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Here.
Is that
it?
Yep.
How do I get a figure? I forget.
You should use magnifying on the bottom. Plus.
I don't see it.
Center bottom.
I have a high. Good.
Yeah.
Good enough or more? Good enough?
Sure, I could see it.
So we just got, the city council approved the 400,000. What did I do? Let me go higher. What happened? Is that where you want me to be?
Yeah.
So the $400,000 is approved by city council. So that is now subtracted from here, Jamie?
Yeah.
So basically, what do we have? We had 946. That's not what we have, right?
So we had,
Our one.
so in the historic preservation account, we have 121,000. In the open space account, we have 5,800. In the affordable housing account, we have 791,000.
I thought it was 890. Did we use it for something?
We have an earmark for town lodging house design.
Got it.
And then for the undesignated fund, we're at 946, 930. And that's the account balances.
So we don't have any more money in open space because we just used it for the pool. We do have money in historic preservation, affordable housing. We also have, and it's important to note this for tonight's meeting, 250,000 set aside in the budget for city space. That was decided in June.
That's our annual
Annual
appropriation.
And I have an idea on that. We'll talk about it in a minute. Does anybody have any questions? So if I were to say what's available, is it 946 plus this money or whatever? 946 is the free cash, so to speak.
946,930 is what's in the undesignated account. 790,899 is in the affordable housing. And then 121 in historic preservation, 5,000.
Because for anybody watching, we cannot use historic preservation or affordable housing unless it's exactly for those two items in these accounts. The undesignated fund can be used for anything. We also have $2 million bonding authorization from the city council for city space. That was authorized. Anything else, Jamie, we should go over in this?
So the 250 in the Old Town House retains the amount is above the 3.5 million that was set aside.
We'll talk about it.
Just putting that up.
Let me get it here. Okay, it doesn't look like we're getting more people, which is disappointing.
Are there any of those?
Can you bring the account balances back up for the projects? Like,
Right here,
see
these
what's-
projects?
I want to see what's on Old Town Hall.
Let me see where it is. Old Town Hall, all of these things. This is the bond authorization here. This is the money that was authorized for phase 2 previously. correct, Jane?
There's three
Well,
accounts.
that was
There's three
phase
accounts
two,
that have
and phase
spendable?
two was the only phase remaining.
Or we changed it from the three
Right, but
phases?
the bond authorization was made before that,
Okay,
so
but this 1.25 was for phase
one
two.
point two five million went to phase two
Right.
after we split phase two into two phases.
What's your question, Michael?
Well, do I see three spendable accounts there? Not the 2 million. The 2 million is the bond, right?
Right.
But there's a 25.5, a 250 and a 1,250.
You had some money left in here. Didn't we use that?
Yeah, the 25,500 is for design
Right.
that you came back earlier this year to ask to spend from,
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know the current balance.
correct.
What's the 250?
250 is the retained city match
Every year,
that the CPA voted into the budget at the beginning of
Okay,
this.
so that's
fiscal year.
not actually appropriated.
That's in the retained,
earmark.
it's in the retained city match
What-
account. It's been through the
let
appropriation.
me explain. If we choose to use that, it has to go through city council and be turned into a construction
Okay.
account.
But
we-
it's already earmarked for the project.
It's in a budget account. The original idea was that it would reduce bonding
Exactly.
and or pay for the phase, the second phase, the original second phase, rather than bond as much. Okay?
This was the original.
Way back when way back in the beginning, we kept doing 250 every year, which is why this 1.25 got up to that height, because we used that. Anything else on this?
And is there another 250 coming into that?
Only if we appropriate it in the budget for 2025.
Next year.
This is the
So
2000,
the 24 budget's already passed. That's from the 24.
that's the 24
Thank
budget.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. Anything else that we need to talk about administratively? Jamie, all set with the,
There's minutes, and then if we wanted to,
well, let me ask a question. We have 5 members here. Were all of you here on August 10th?
Yes,
Yes? So I take a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, please.
motion to approve the minutes from August 10th.
Second. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. We have no one signed in, right? Okay, so aye. Public speak. We did account balances. We're all set with the coalition and that budget. I saw those emails going back and forth between you and
Yep.
Stuart. We're all set.
so that was, to catch everyone up, the CPA coalition switched their billing from an annual cycle to a fiscal year cycle. We were on their annual cycle, so we were getting their invoices to be members of the coalition in January. They sent me another invoice in beginning of September for FY24, and there's some back and forth to coordinate. Are we being double billed for half of this fiscal year? But the next invoice won't come for a while and be for the 2025. So we decided to go ahead and pay that invoice for the year.
Okay, anything else for anybody?
It's 2875 for the year.
Okay, Burns, why don't you share, and I'll put the floor to you guys to discuss what you're asking the committee to do.
Hello, so we came to you a number of months ago, looking forward to bidding the phase 2 elevator and entryway to the second floor of Old Town Hall. And we did put it out to bid, and those bids came back to us, and they were higher than we anticipated. We had done a great job on our first phase, coming in right exactly where our cost estimator, where those cost estimator came in. So we were looking positively at phase 2. Here tonight to give you some background on the bidding of the project and sort of what has transpired in between now and then is principal of criminal architect Alon Tierney. And she has shared a letter. Did you share that with everyone? Great. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if you could share sort of the breakdown of what the letter says, that would be great.
Sure,
Can you introduce yourself to the,
sure.
waiting for the minute?
I'm Alon Tierney. I'm president of Kuhn Riddle Architects in Amherst, Massachusetts. I've had the good fortune to work with City Space since 2016.
Yeah.
This project is important to us as a firm. It's important to me as an individual who spent a lot of time in Easthampton growing up, and I'm next door in Northampton. And I think that this project is important for the historical context of Easthampton and for what it could bring to Easthampton. And we have at Kuhn Riddle Architects really put our all into it, and we are 110% behind it. So it's always hard when a project, and this has been happening a lot over the last 3 to 4 years, even before COVID started, but COVID really spiked the prices, and it's been difficult to put our finger on numbers. So I have given the folks here a letter. I'm just going to outline it so folks who maybe are online can understand what the letter's about. So the elevator addition came in about 30% more than what we had estimated. The low bidder was Kiter Builders out of Northampton. They're a firm that we've worked with quite a bit, and they were able to share some of the information from their bids on a public bidding process. That isn't always the case, but because they also are local and invested in the community, they really wanted to see this project happen, and they're willing to work with us. To give you some context, in the fall of 2022, City Space came to Kuhn Riddle and said, let's try to go forward with the elevator addition. And can we get an idea? Because as you know, phase 2 was both the elevator addition and the second floor renovation. Is there a way for us to just do the elevator addition as one phase? Now the new phase 2, and then phase 3 would be the second floor renovation. And can we get a ballpark price, an order of magnitude cost for the two, for separating? So we asked our cost estimator to take because we had prepared full construction documents for the entire project. Can you take that set of drawings from 2018 and understanding that we're talking about just the addition and all the work that relates to the addition and very little of what's going to happen inside. So it was a verbal sort of discussion with her, a little bit of written context, but we didn't give her drawings and a specification that completely work for the estimate. She is a very detailed person, and I brought actually one of her cost estimates, which was trying to divide all of it. It's very well broken out, very thoughtfully done. And so she tried to do that and came up with a budget of 2.1 million for the second, for the elevator addition, and then a little over 4.6 million for phase 3, the second floor renovation. So put it out to bid. Higher than that, 30% higher. So that was disappointing to all of us, a real gut punch. And in August of 2023, we asked her to take the bid documents. Now we had a clearly defined scope of work that we had put out to bid and said, okay, take the documents that we gave to all the bidders. Can you look through it? Because we were trying to understand where we missed. How were we so far off on our estimate? And with, is there any way that we can reduce the cost the next time we do this? So she went through it, and she did this as a courtesy. Again, because she's also local and cares about this community a lot. And she came up with some areas that had more information about scope that she had not thought about because she didn't have that information. And the areas of increase were in demolition, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection sections. And she increased her budget by about $400,000 total. This was still less than the low bid by about $235,000. However, it was a 9% difference and a $30,000 difference. At the same time, and we were doing this on purpose, sort of keeping the Kiter builders and our cost estimate separate so that we're kind of getting independent information from them. Kiter was giving us feedback we had shared with them what our initial estimates were for certain divisions of construction. And said, you know, can you fill in some of these blanks for us and tell us what your numbers were? Because in a public bidding process, we only get the general contractor's number, and then we get all of the filed subbidders. So there's big chunks of money, but there's not a lot of detail. So Kiter was willing to kind of look at each division of construction. If you have questions, does everyone here know what that means? Okay.
No,
Okay.
I don't actually.
Okay.
You
So
can be brief. but
yeah, I'll
just-
be brief.
Okay.
In order for builders and architects and engineers to think about the cost of construction, we break it down into certain divisions, is what we call it. So, for example, one division is concrete, another division is masonry, another one is wood framing. So we put the money into those buckets.
Yeah.
And so there's 30-something divisions that it gets broken out to, but everyone generally understands that under each division, this scope of work is within it.
Okay.
So that's a way that we can kind of compare numbers. And so the numbers that Kiter looked at our original estimate that was done in the fall of 2022, and then what their bid breakdown was. So they gave us a breakdown that they wouldn't have normally shared with anybody because it's a competitive bidding process, and said, so here are the areas or the scope of work where our numbers are different than your original estimate. And so Division 3, which is concrete, so pouring the foundations, they said, you know, due to the tight site conditions, it's very close to the church next door. There's a childcare center right there. You can't get a truck in there to pour concrete. You're going to have to pump it with a big arm, and that increases the cost. Because this is a historic building, the basement structure is a stone foundation that's over 150 years old, and we have to delicately yet firmly attach the addition to it, allowing a little bit of movement between the two buildings. And so that's called pinning the foundation. So pinning the foundation of the new structure to the existing structure is a little bit complex because you can imagine with a stone foundation, there are gaps in certain places. And anyway, and because of that, you have to put a lot of them in there. So the number of embedded anchors was significant. They also, in this number, the concrete number, they put in what we call site flat work, concrete sidewalks and plazas and things like that. Site work is sometimes in a different division, and it was in our estimate. So that made sense because the bid was $38,000 less than our estimate, and I think that might be part of the flat work. So it's a little bit of you know, trying to sleuth through things and make your best educated guess about how somebody might have put numbers in which bucket or division. And then rebar and doweling, that's sort of the steel reinforcement in the concrete. And then the elevator tower goes down to the basement. And you have to dig a pit in addition to that. So that makes a very deep foundation. And when you go deeper into the earth, it has to be much more structurally robust. And so those are all factors in concrete that they think is why our estimate maybe was not equal to what their actual bids were. Miscellaneous and structural metals. So Division 5 has both of these, scopes of work. Structural metal are like I-beams and the steel. Miscellaneous metals are kind of all the other stuff that holds the building together. But one of them is a filed subbid, and ironically, it's always ironic to me, miscellaneous metals is the filed subbid, whereas structural metals is carried by the general contractor. But just to say that the general has no control over the filed subbids and what they're bidding on exactly. We try to be very clear in our specifications and identify all of that. But sometimes when people are putting bids together, even when they're filed subbidders, they potentially put in more just to cover themselves. And so when they went back and talked to the filed subbidders and to their sub for structural steel, they determined that there was some scope overlap, meaning that they both priced the same thing and included it. You know, if this wasn't a public bid, we'd be able to have a conversation with the contractor and say, okay, we're only going to pay for that once. And we could potentially do that once we were under contract if we knew that there was scope overlap. One thing that I forgot to include in my letter, but that Andrew, who's the project architect from Humrill that's been working on this, Andrew Bagg in my office said, you know, there's an exterior temporary ramp that has to be installed at the front of the building to maintain accessibility while construction is going on. And that is a $20,000 to $40,000 price that would have been in this number too, that would not have been in this.
$20,000 to $40,000.
Yeah. It's a big ramp. Those stairs are very tall, and it's about 60 feet of ramp. I
Yeah,
think.
it's 60 feet of ramp, so it's a double switchback before it turns.
It can't be like pressure treated lumber or something, is it?
Well, it could be, but you gotta meet code. So 2 sets of rails, certain widths.
I don't know anything about
Aluminum.
construction costs. Let me tell you.
We priced it in the thought that we might install it ahead of the project and take it out of the project, and the cost of the metal itself, not
It has to be the metal.
20 grand.
Okay.
Aluminum.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Yeah, please feel free to ask any questions. I know I'm dumping a lot of information. So the next division is thermal and moisture. So basically what keeps the heat and cool in the building and what keeps the water out of the building. So things like roofing and insulation. And again, there are, within the Division 7, there are filed subbid sections as well, one of them being roofing. Unfortunately, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, we didn't get a roofing filed subbid. So that meant the general bidder had to take on that scope of work. And when that sometimes happens, they're scrambling a little bit to cover that because they were anticipating that they were going to have a filed subbidder.
Yeah,
So
they only have a couple of weeks to put their number together. So they have to scramble pretty quickly to identify a subcontractor, get a price, and get it into their overall general bid.
and that's always, when somebody's scrambling, they are always going to make their number comfortable because they're rushing it. Anyways, in this sort of review, we thought, oh, the numbers are really different when we were looking at the scope of work. But what we found out is people were putting things in different buckets. Our estimator had some numbers in one bucket and the bidders had the numbers in a different bucket. And so once we added all the parts of Division 7 together, is only about a $15,000 difference. So it wasn't a significant difference. Interior finishes is the one that we have not been able to really sleuth out and figure out why it's so much more expensive than what we estimated. It's $262,000 more. We went through the painting, which is a filed subbid, was very close to what was estimated. The flooring also was very close. So finishes are all the things that go inside the building, all the surfaces that you touch, flooring, ceilings, handrails, actually not handrails, but carpeting, paint, tile, the finished product that you're seeing inside of the building. It's not a huge building, it's not a huge addition. So, and we have a really nice wood ceiling, but we thought it was really nice at about $13,000 to $15,000. The estimate for some reason is $47,000, and we're not sure, like, because we went to the manufacturer and said, you know, this is the product that we identified as, you can identify it as sort of a base product, say we want it to be just like this. You can use something different, but this is the basis of design. And they said, yeah, install $13,000 to $15,000 for the amount of ceiling, which sounds like a lot. It's an acoustical wood ceiling in the lobby area. So it's serving both acoustical purposes and ceiling purposes, and the lighting is integral to it. Anyway, we're not sure why that number is so much higher.
Could it be a supply chain issue in that in other jobs that they're working on, they think they can get something, and then when they get to the point of construction, that product isn't available anymore, and there's a whole bait switch. So I'm wondering if there was a little bit of cushion in there to kind of cover a supply chain versus sort of finish. I don't know.
Possibly,
Yeah.
but 3 times seems a lot.
Yeah.
More?
Yeah.
I could understand if it was like 25,000 as opposed to 15,000.
Yeah.
An option is to put this kind of ceiling, but it just doesn't fit with the intent or the structure, you know, it doesn't.
I don't think that's an option when you're dealing with historic preservation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not an option.
And it's meant to be an entryway that complements
Yeah.
the historic value of the.
So that's just that's why we wanted to go with this wood product, so that it looks like it fits. You know, it complements the space and isn't just on.
And there was no competing bid for it. It was the singular bid.
yes, right.
This was the sub bidder?
And the other thing we added is so we have we included what we call a hideaway ticket booth, which wasn't in the base bid, but we have an area where we can tuck a little desk away so that it can be a box office at certain points, and then not a box office. And that was part of the phasing of not being able to build out the second floor, but still having a space that could serve as a box office for the blue room or, but again, none of that added up to the $262,000. So we're still not quite sure what the numbers are, that were significantly different. And like I said, Kiter gave us some information, enough for us to understand where the differences were, but they didn't give us a full breakout of everything. And they really, didn't have to do that. So, and I think just to reiterate, I said this before, is the lack of competitive bids from sub-bidders was an issue. We were looking for 11 different sub-bidders. On 11 of those, we only got 5 sub-bidders, and 5 that were single bidders. And so when you go through a public bidding process, all the bidders see who's pulled the drawings, who's come to the walkthrough, and if they see that they're the only mechanical contractor there, the only electrical contractor there, they know that they can put in a very comfortable number and win the bid. So, and then on 3 of the sub bids, we didn't get any bids. So I think that those are all factors that led to a much higher cost than anticipated. The roofing, elevator, and fire protection bids were the ones that we didn't get. What I will say is, when the number came in, we have, and this has been brought up, we have an interesting elevator that is a 90-degree elevator. So you go in one direction and you turn 90 degrees to go out of the elevator. It's a very unique elevator. And even the bidders some of the bidders said, there aren't very many manufacturers who make that. So our initial thought was, oh, it's the elevator that's causing this issue. The elevator actually came in less than what we had estimated, so it's not the elevator. Also, DA Sullivan, who is also a really well-known construction firm out of Northampton, their bid was about 2.6% higher than Kiter's bid, which was only about $70,000. So to me, when two local, really good contractors come in very close to each other, that's the cost. That's what the cost for the project is at this particular time and in this market.
Kiter is a really reputable construction company. I know they've done a lot of work at Smith College and
Yeah.
they really know their stuff.
Yeah.
So,
They're very professional.
Yeah.
I enjoy working with both of them, both those firms. And they were the two low bidders. So overall, the average of the 5 bids, general bids that we did receive was about $3.1 million, or about 14% over Kiter's bid. And just to summarize, it's a very small but very complex project. I did bring, this is what we call a half-size set of drawings, if you wanted to flip through them, just to see the amount of detail that needs to go into this very, very small but complicated space. And it's getting attached to a 150-year-old building, and it's just, unfortunately, it's an expensive project.
Thank you. Burns,
Yes. So
you scroll down a little bit more, because I'm looking at the same document. What are you asking the CPA to provide for today funding-wise? Because I see the bottom of that particular document is 877,930 CPA fund request.
right, so Mike, would you mind presenting the numbers here as far as why there's this increase in cost? Alon is talking to Alon. I think that was very helpful and sort of understanding the process. Before you do that, I do want to say sort of what happened in between. We had about a month once the bids came in to see if we could,
Find them.
find the additional funds. And we went to our state rep, Dan Carey, and Senator Vilas and Kristen Alecko, who's with the governor's office of Western Massachusetts, to see if, we could get that bond bill in place. If there's some way we could get a promise and know that that would be in place so we could take this project under contract. Unfortunately, if you remember during the summer, what happened is we had farm flooding. And that became really the primary focus of the governor's office. And this was just not in the cards to make that happen. But we certainly tried our best to see if we could turn something like that around. We just don't have the individual donors that we could say, do you have another $750,000 that you could give to us for this project? So that was, while Alon and Andrew and the rest of the criminal staff were working so hard to get these numbers and sort of figure out what the cost estimate, what was the differentiation. We were doing that. And Mike was also looking at, along with Bob Parent, the numbers of the bids and sort of the median amount for each one.
Yeah, so that's essentially where, if you look at the under there,
Yeah.
go down screen.
Yeah. That's it.
So I think they're pretty straightforward. I'll go through them quickly. Design and engineering, that's gone up a little bit, primarily because of that.
Hold on a second. I'm looking at something that was in the package that's a different document.
Because it's higher up on the screen. So there's two.
There's
There's
two statements of budget on that page.
And the one we're
Okay,
looking
so
at,
I must.
This is the one that they're
lower one
asking
is
for. You're looking at.
and I will say that this also includes, within Alon's letter, there's an additional design fee that is included as part of this additional bidding process that we will have to undertake, and amendments to the plans themselves that will have the additional drawings and.
Okay, got it.
And that's not in the document that you
No,
sent
because
me.
I gave it to her late.
So after the meeting, can you resend that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So these are the
So
figures.
design
that we're
engineering
looking at.
cost, You see the number. Bidding and advertising, that's higher than we had gone into the first project, but we're gonna go electronic this time, which is a higher initial cost in an effort to try to reach out further for subs. We had great response for generals. I mean, I'm be happy if they all responded again, but subs we had issues with. Construction work, that's the number we're pegging for the bids. And that is an average number based on what we got for real world bids. So the 5 bids we got, that's the average. We think that's comfortable. It's, we certainly could have, been very conservative and gone to the low number, or very liberal and gone to the high number, but we want to be realistic, and things are going to go up. So you're not going to get the low bid at this point, right? So that's the average. We believe that we're going to see inflation. We were hoping to be able to do this in the spring. That inflation number, in my mind, might be a little low if we end up going into the fall, but we'll see on that. Historic window restoration remains the same. I talked to the 2 contractors. They'll hold off for 6 months and probably not raise their price, so I let it alone. Utilities it's an estimate. The city's going to have a charge for water and sewer connections. We're going to have to pay fees to Eversource for transformer reconnection, all of that stuff. There's going to be, since this is a real construction project as opposed to the work we just did, which was essentially mechanical inside, there's concrete testing and soil testing and the like. So that's a testing estimate. We've taken a contingency on the whole cost of 10%. So that's where we get our project total. We have paid Coon Riddle some money. Half of that's come from the CPA. Thank you. So we're looking at 3.9. On the funding side, you can see the 2 top numbers are the numbers that were originally provided to City Space for this project. The 23 number you're familiar with is the $1,250,000, and the old money is design money. We're estimating that we're going to be able to come up with more money than we have on hand now. So that City Space number is a couple $100,000 more than we have in our pocket at the moment. So we're going to be doing fundraising. We're going to be reaching back out again. But as Vern said earlier, there really aren't any deep pockets around here. So that's what we think we're going to be able to raise.
Can I ask a question? At the bottom, smaller print says you're hoping 630 to match the 877. Is that what that is?
That's correct.
Okay. So the 877.
So we're short $1.5 million. We're asking you for 56% of that.
877, 930. Let me ask again.
6-ish.
You have to rebid, right? You have to rebid.
Yes.
Thanks for the specificity on why this went up. I think that's, in my view, I expected it. With all the supply chain and all the inflation and construction, I expected it. I have an idea on how to fund this. And I want to bring it out there, Jamie, you're going to chime in, I'm sure. City Council approved a $2 million bond. That's already been approved by this committee and by the City Council. So this, just forget the idea of a bond, but there's $2 million left, which we told the City Council we wouldn't use until we went to the final phase. So we do have to tell the City Council there's been a change. That's my obligation. I suggest if we bond after January 1st, I was told by the treasurer, the payment on that bond, whatever that bond is, doesn't come until after June 30th. Okay. Now that's important because you're going to have to budget to pay that bond to CPA committee later. We use the $250 we already put set aside to reduce the amount of the bond that we need now. It does not increase our donation to the project. It simply reduces the bond. So I'm saying this to you guys because I'm not going to be here. I'll be around and I'm going to support City Space even though I'm not going to be on the council. when they come back for more money for phase 3, whenever that is, there's only gonna be 2 million less than, or 900, whatever that, 878 less out of the 2 million left. So what is that? 1.1 million. That's all that's left in what's already been appropriated. Do we understand my thinking here? The 250,000, which we've already budgeted, would be transferred to construction. And then the bonding, we would ask the council to, the council's already approved the bonding. We just tell them we'd like the city to bond from January 1st. What is that? 630.
Yeah, you'd be bonding around a little over $500,000.
Well, it's 630 plus the 250 we already have in the budget. Less, so.
Or 600, whatever.
And I've been told that they can do short-term bonds if the amount isn't too high. So that would be a less higher interest, but less, not hard to do, I guess. But we have
State
to,
house bonds are really,
so that's my thought. We don't bond this whole thing. We only bond what we need to bond beyond the 250. Now, we told the city council we wouldn't be doing that until this phase 3. So we have to tell them, hey, things change. And I strongly support this project. It's all about accessibility. And we're in good shape because last night we had a half-hour presentation from the Disability Committee about the lack of accessibility in this city. And that's what this is about. I think it's a good selling point, and it was a selling point before. So I'm asking this committee to consider that method of funding. What do you think, Jamie? It's possible, right? I'm talking about administrative.
Yeah, I mean, like, administrative.
You decide, Jamie.
Yeah,
It's all on you.
You're asking the committee and then you turn to me.
Well, I'm saying funding wise, that's a way we could go.
I believe so.
We always said that 250 we put in every year would either be used to pay on a bond or we would use it to reduce the amount we have to bond. So that's all we're doing. We're reducing the amount we have to bond. The difference is we're bonding sooner than we thought we would. I would
and we
like,
still have to raise the difference
right, and that's important because that's a selling point.
beyond the.
You guys have a match, more match. I'm just curious, this is a fairly specific 877, 930, and I'm wondering, you want to round it off to 878, period? I mean,
Well,
it sounds
yeah.
a little too specific. You don't know what's gonna happen. You have a 10% contingency, so I don't know.
And if that's not used, does that get returned back to the CPA?
Because it's at the
Well,
rule.
it stays in the account if we don't use it.
And it could be applied to your phase 3.
But so, I
Yes.
mean, I guess
Right.
in the past, the city hasn't wanted to go out to bond until the matching funds are in place, because once the bond is not the bond authorization, but like once the bond, we actually go
It's
to like
issued, yeah.
issue the bond, the city will start to
Pay on it.
pay on it. And even if it's 6 months until June 30th, the city's still paying money for a bond that might
No, she
go.
brings up a
And
good point.
given the way that we bill, you know, Jamie will be able to watch how the balance is going. We'll have some estimate of how much we're gonna spend over time once we have a general contractor in place. You got $1,250,000 that's already in your hands, and so that's gonna pay for the, you know, for the first 30 or 40% of what we bill.
But don't we have to have all of the funds?
I think she's right. I think
place to-
that's 680 or what is it?
No, I don't think so.
630. I think you have to have that in place before they'll bond. I know.
No, I meant after everything's in place and we start spending it.
Okay, well, that I understand.
You make the $1,250,000 is going to last probably 6 months, so you may not have to bond until after June. You know, but that's
I
gonna be a
didn't
city
think-
decision.
I didn't think you could go out to bid
We
with-
can,
if the city doesn't have the funds in place.
no, we can go out to bid if the city's committed the funds through a vote. How you raise the money is not our concern.
Well, we already committed. to
We
vote.
are, so the vote is, here's $1,250,000. If that money was, you were gonna bond it or whether you had it on hand, as long as we have the vote, that commits the city to giving us $1,250,000, however you raise it.
So a new vote, which transfers that 250 into construction and bonds the remainder of it. A new vote by the
Well, I
city
don't know that
council.
you need, I don't know that you need the bonding vote. And that's not my business. You've already got a bonding vote.
I'm sorry, Michael, but I will insist on it. because we, in the minutes, told them we wouldn't need to bond until after. And I'm doing that only because I want to be totally transparent about this with the city council.
And whatever you do,
And the mayor will insist on
that
it
is
too.
fine, but what I'm getting at is that city council already authorized bonding. You need to tell the city council, you need to cooperate with the mayor, but you may not need another bond vote.
I think the current bond vote's now expired.
No, it's not.
No?
I don't think so.
I thought they expire after
I
6
don't
months
believe,
or a
I
year.
don't believe. the
I don't think
bond
they're expired at
authorization
all.
expires.
They don't expire at all. I don't think, Amy. But
Because occasionally you have to actually rescind them when they show up on your books and you haven't spent it. So they don't have a life.
so you're right. I will just tell the city council what's going on because the debate will be, do they want to, if the CPA committee agrees, transfer that 250 into a construction account? And that's money that's already been approved by the city council in the budget, but it still has to be transferred. So that's still a vote of the city council.
And
And along with that vote, I'm telling them, you've already authorized the bonding, but you should know that we're gonna ask the city to bond the remaining amount.
well,
Can we
they
back up a
actually have
little
to
bit?
authorize the whole amount. So the
Pardon
2
me?
million,
Right, and
that 2 million hasn't been. So the city authorized 878,000. 250, you can tell them we're gonna, you're gonna pay out of what you have on hand, and the city's gonna raise the rest, however the city raises the rest.
I think there might need to be a discussion that involves the
Of
treasurer
course.
and the auditor before CPA can really figure out how to move forward on this.
Well, the mechanics, you need that for. I think you can
I-
vote it.
I think we could vote to move forward. We just have to, might be mechanic things. Jeff?
I have some basic questions that I'd like, before we get into the weeds of how the
Okay,
money may
sure, sure.
flow. So one of the things I just want to better understand is why there were so many sub bids, and why not just incorporate into one bid if it seems like that was part of,
Public bidding
you have to do sub bidding for all of those different trades?
required.
Over $25,000.
Anything over $25,000,
In those trades.
you have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a huge amount of money, but it's
Yeah.
$60,000. And I don't, why not take that off of your bid amount? It
That's a
just saves a
good
little
idea.
bit of money. It's been done before in the past.
It was always that way
Right.
Is there,
until this administration.
would the CPA be willing to, vouch for that in some way or request that along with us?
I would.
Well, yeah, but let's first decide if and how we're going to fund this request.
Well, it makes a difference in terms of the bottom line number. That's why I'm asking these questions, because if we're gonna be, $3.1 million is a lot of money.
But just so you have a sense of it from the city's perspective, if they're expecting permit fees to come in at a certain number and you suck 60 grand out of it, that might not fly with the finance side.
And I don't know how we decide to reduce our request by 60,000. We have no idea if that's gonna.
I know, I'm asking for a little bit of the sharpening of the pencils, that's all. That's all I'm asking, is maybe there's some value engineering that may or may not have been considered. Permit fees was the one thing that I just saw, and I was like,
Just so you know, I mean, informally, I've asked about paying permit fees to the different departments and they say, you have to pay the permit fees.
that's unfortunate.
So whether that could change, I don't know. I don't know that we have the wherewithal to make it change.
I know that you don't, I just wanted to put that,
That's a
put it
good
out there
idea.
as an idea. I
just
know
don't
that
how
it's been
we
done in the
accomplish
past,
it.
that's
It
all.
has been done in the past with this project.
And others.
Different iterations.
Well, we can look at it. Okay, anything else?
And you're right, it would come out from there, though, that kind of
Right.
decision.
That's,
But,
I'm sure you have questions.
because Greg,
Actually, I got a bonding question. I'll ask it to you. How much interest do we pay on those bonds? On that
Depends on
debt?
how the treasurer decides to bond it.
Okay,
Short term, Mike can know better. Short term bonding is more expensive than long term 10, 20-year bond,
all right.
but you pay over a lot more time.
But that would change our numbers going forward, right?
It only
So the
changes.
bonding, the CPA pays the interest not out of the project, but out of other CPA
Oh,
funds.
okay.
So the, essentially, when the budget is set at the beginning of the year, we
Yeah.
figure out how much, there's a bonding schedule with how much in interest and how much in principal.
Okay. And that
And
comes out
then-
of the,
And that just gets paid for out
Okay.
of the CPA budget before the CPA
And
has
it
a budget.
reduces what you end up being able to spend. It comes
Right,
off the
yeah.
top.
Well, that's why we put that 250 aside.
Yep.
Every year for the last, 5 or 6 years to help reduce, bonding
That's
costs
smart,
and
yeah.
everything.
Yep.
So if we use it now, I'm gonna sell this as yes, but now there's less than $2 million left in
Okay.
what you've already appropriated city council.
Okay.
By virtue of all this that we're asking for. I'm not sure, Mike, do you
That's
think we need a council vote on the full amount? I think it's just the 250.
Well,
I'm gonna inform them of this full.
how do you get the remaining money out of the 2 million without a city council vote?
They have to, this treasurer by law has to bond. If we've already appropriated the bond, we've already approved the bond, it's been approved by the city council. So if the CPA committee asks that we finance this through bonding, they have to do it. The treasurer has to do it. Because it's part of the law.
So I'll let you ask that question elsewhere because it seems to me, just in seeing what's happening, that every time we come in for money, it has to be approved twice. Once to get it over to a holding account and then once to get it to construction. I'm of the impression, personally, that the 2 million is in a holding account. But
Technically.
that's really not my.
But to go to my earlier point about transparency, I will ask the council to approve the 878, whatever we decide, and show funding of 250 from.
Yeah, and your treasurer and auditor can verify that you actually need council authority. I can't.
I don't know whether we do, but what's the difference if we ask for it?
I think it's fine because we need to tell them what we're doing. And, you
But
know,
we
I'm not
first
gonna- I'm
have
not-
to see if the CPA committee, which only has 5 members here, disappointingly, how do you guys all feel about it? I haven't heard we've heard from Jess. Greg?
Yeah, so, I guess I do have a couple questions. Right now, we're kind of accelerating things with the bonding. There's a whole other phase after phase 2. So I guess I'm curious, what about phase 3? What's happening? Is phase 2 standalone? I feel like we're inching our way out the limb. And I just, it makes me a little bit nervous. So, I just came back from my first trip to the Adirondacks and had a lovely weekend with some college buddies and we played poker. Not a great poker player, but one of the things in poker is you have multiple rounds of betting. And I kind of feel like we've got multiple rounds here. We've got phase 2 and we've got another phase after this. And I can be willing to think about this as a standalone phase 2. And I'm just curious if once I put my chips in for this round of betting, what the next round looks like. Because if we are unable to get over the line with phase 3, does that change the calculus for phase 2? That's just my question. And I say this being a fan of the project, and I'm sure it was a gut punch, the 30%. We don't know what the next 2 or 3 years is going to look like as far as pricing and inflation. So it just adds another level of uncertainty for this process for the city. And I don't really know, there is at some point, the math eventually compels us to press pause. And I don't know when that point is, and I'm not sure we're there, but I just wanted to speak aloud my reservations and ask the question about phase 3.
I have a thought. When Burns called me about this, I said, if you build it, they will come. If you build the elevator and there's major change to the building and we've added accessibility, that, in my view, will spur more looking at this project from donors, maybe the state, because we've done something. We have an elevator, we've done something big on this project. So my feeling is that is a gamble, to use your analogy. But if we don't do it, the project dies. And I'm sorry, it's that, to me, if you build the elevator and you build and you do everything you're doing and it's visible, the city knows, hey, the city being the people of the city know, hey, we can do this. Now, there are those who say we should spend more money on housing, forget this project. I disagree that I think the both can work together. But in my view, if you don't do this now, when do you do it? The money's been authorized through bonding. We don't. What do we lose? If it's a white elephant and the third floor doesn't get done for 10 years, it still has an elevator ready to go for it. So I'm not saying it's a loss if we don't get to phase 3 for a while.
Well,
If we don't do
Aren't the
phase 2,
aren't the maintenance costs for the elevator though, and all the fees and so forth, built on an assumption that the upstairs is gonna be finished and you're gonna have a revenue stream to support that? I mean, is that not?
Operating the elevator is within our capacity now. Blue Room's doing a lot of activity, rooms, and so we've got enough operating capacity to cover the cost of elevator maintenance and that sort of thing. I can't speak for the board because I'm only a member, but my view of the board's commitment to this is 100% it'll happen. All 3 phases. Timing, I don't know. And the question that I think you validly raise is, will the city get tired of funding this? You know, will it become, geez, town hall again? That would put a big crimp in, I think, phase 3, because we're going to ask to sit down. And I'm not speaking for the organization, but I would bet that we would ask you to help fund a $5 million phase 3.
And we just don't know.
But yeah, we don't know. And, you know, Burns, I should let you speak about kind of what we're thinking about down the road, but.
Just a quick question. How's the fundraising going? Is it going as you expected? Did you have projections in your?
Sure. So the fundraising, we were hoping to launch fundraising for phase 3 at this point. So we're having to reorganize our focus for this portion of the fundraising. I will say that, you know, the city is, the CPA has been so generous towards this project, and individual donors have come forward for this project.
Okay.
The state has given $400,000 to this project, which is not enough. I mean, this is a building that's in a historic district. It's a historic building and on a main street. And it has the potential to create a lot of economic development initiatives on that street and in the surrounding region. And we all know that. You know, I will say that I look back at plans when the city started this, before City Space. And there are plans for an elevator 20 years ago. And this has been a big hurdle. And we had to speak about donors, we had a meeting with the donor just prior to going out to bid. He said, you know, I'm going to give you a donation. I've never given to the organization ever. I'm going to give you $10,000. I could give you more, but I want to see this elevator happen first. And we're hearing a lot of people say that, who want to see this project happen, but they're not sure that this elevator piece is going to happen. So if you believe in this part, I believe that we will be able to take, as Dan said, to the next step to getting that phase 3. And
I'm sure we can build an elevator.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely confident that we can,
Absolutely.
you know, but when you talk about, it's been 20 years we've been talking about an elevator. My concern is that we then end up starting the clock ticking on how many years until we get to phase 3 completed.
So
You
phase,
know?
right, so phase 3, part of this, we just received another $100,000 towards historic tax credits. For this project. We received, this is $750,000. When we build this portion, we can then cash in some of those historic tax credits that will go to phase 3. So, it's all combined with one another. And I will say that I'm not here to build an elevator. That's not why I'm doing this project. It's not why I'm spending all this time and energy, and it's not why Marcia is either. I mean, we want an elevator to get to the second floor, and we want to create accessibility. But we're doing this to preserve this building holistically. And that second floor, I don't know when the last time you've been up there, but I go up there at least once a week. And we don't have spaces like this in Easthampton. It is the only space like this. And
I'm not, just so you know, I'm just I was just asked a question. I'm a big fan of the project. I live close by. I am on that stretch of Main Street all the time.
Right.
There's an Envision Main Street initiative here in the city. It's an opportune time to put our chips forward
Absolutely.
in that area and make something happen. What I'm pointing out, though, is that the headwinds have become stronger. It's a no fault of your own, and truly no fault of ours either. But interest rates are higher, construction costs are higher.
Sure.
I mean, it makes bonding and paying for a project like this. Your question about if not now, like what better time is there? There's no better time as far as your A team here who's done all the work to get us, thinking about this. But there is a much better time for borrowing money and for paying for construction. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So that's what I'm trying to point out a little bit. And I do believe there's a path to phase 3. I just want to be very transparent about my feelings and my reservations about leading the city to a point of like confidence that's faith-based that we're going to get across the finish line with phase 3. And I am optimistic, but I also just want to be realistic. So
I think you bring up some very good points that are worth noting. I think that there is, we'll have Dan leaving at the end of this year, who's been a champion for this project on this committee in particular. We don't know who will be replacing him. We will have a mayoral change in a couple of years. I mean, it's like things can shift politically that could shift the future of the financing of this project. And I think it's an important point to just note that phase 3 could be difficult in terms of coming back again for more CPA money, depending on how much you're asking for. If it's several $1 million, I think that could be a tricky sell. In terms of this, I don't have an issue with this phase 2, but I think I think you bring up an important point in terms of like the long-term financing.
I honestly, I'm kind of surprised at the suggestion of bonding. And I was thinking that, because of interest rates right now, that there might be a potential to take more cash out that is available in the funds for this year if you don't have the projects on the table. But that was my thought. I just thought that was the direction, Dan, that you were going to go into, especially with considering interest rates.
I can tell you that the headwinds of adding to the bonding right now and adding to this using CPA funds, that wouldn't fly. I don't feel, because there's housing, there's other projects that are coming our way, especially affordable housing projects that are well in excess of the 780,000 we have set aside. So my idea on the bonding was it's already been approved by the city council. Now, to go to Greg's point and Mike's point, that bonding doesn't have to happen right away. We just have to say it's been voted. And if Mike is right, you can go out to bid and everything. When you bond, maybe it's 6 months from now, interest rates, I don't know bonding, but maybe interest rates are better. But the point is, if you want this funding to happen, I think it has to be with money that's already been approved by the council. To ask for more money out of the CPA committee, I would have a hard time voting for that, because I know what's coming, affordable housing wise. And the council is that way too, very much so. They're very worried about or how we're gonna fund affordable housing projects. There's a Main Street project that's gonna come to us. We have 3 schools. And we all talked about putting aside $750,000 in the budget this year. But as Jess said, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what they could ask for. So I don't feel comfortable going to the city council and asking for some of our cash. New cash. I don't feel comfortable. The 250 has already been appropriated in the budget and the bonding's been already approved. It's just a matter of saying, this is now how we're gonna use it, not new money. I don't wanna even go toward new money, okay? That's just me, and I'm giving you my feeling of how the council is. And frankly, my feeling, I don't wanna compete with myself over this project, which I love, and housing, which I love. It's hard.
Yeah, and you know, I keep thinking about what's been happening, you know, when we see what happened in Leominster and other infrastructure issues due to climate, or just how we aren't keeping, you know, taking care of what we have already. And I think about the other side of this, if we don't take care of this building, what kind of cost we would have to undertake to repair this building. If we got to the other side of things. And, you know, we've done a continuous job of taking care of the building, but, you know, it just, part of this elevator is not just adding the accessibility, but it's caring for what exists. You know, taking care of the roofing, taking care of the masonry connected to it. So it's, you know, it's part of that. And, you know, I see that tragedy that happened with flooding, and not that we would expect to see that there, but, you know, that's what happens when you don't take care of the infrastructure that exists.
If I can just add to that a little bit, it is hard. There's so many competing factors and they're all good things to work on. So I can't say vote this one over that one, especially because I actually have 2 clients in the room. But older buildings, they don't build them like they used to. That is for sure. You will never see someone build a building like that again, ever. And you have a treasure that is on the edge. City Space has done a really good job of embracing it and holding it together. But it is at a point where it needs some serious attention. The exterior masonry, the second floor ceiling, parts of it keep coming down. And the longer it takes to take care of that, the more intensive the construction needs to be and the more expensive it needs to be. So I don't have the answer of how do you come up with more money when you only have so much money. But waiting never makes it less expensive with a historic structure and interest rate or otherwise. And climate change and sustainability, it is always more sustainable to maintain your older structures if you can than to take them down. And we would never want to see that building come down.
Any other discussion, Jamie?
Do you have an estimate on the 630,000? How much time you would need to get the rest of that?
Yeah, so actually Marcia and I met with Carrie and Diaz and their teams last week, and you know, we were talking about how do we get into the CIP funds and when that would happen. To get that into the state budget, it looks like it would take through July. So we're looking for, it would start in the spring and then it would be approved for the next budget year. So that is not where we want to get the funds from. We have currently a grant out there that will cover this. We will know that in a month if we do receive that funding. so there's that possibility. And then because that other funding would take, you know, as Alon said in her letter, we're looking at the spring, and if it does not happen to get that funding within that point, this grant falls through, we're not able to secure funding from a state location, we're looking for funding from individual donors and other grant opportunities in the meantime. The CIP funds would happen in the fall. That would be that bonded $750,000 from the state that has already been approved and is awaiting the signature from the governor, and we're working on that piece of it. We, you know, put it front and center. But let me tell you a quick story. Carrie said that during the flooding, he was wearing his galoshes in the middle of the field, and Kristen Aleko, who is the, you know, the key person who is connected to the Western Massachusetts Regional Office for the Governor. He was standing there with her, and she said, "Oh, you know, Representative Carey," and he said, "Hi," and she said, "I know what you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me about cities."
It's out of mind.
Right. So they're talking about this. It's becoming much more serious than it has been, and should have happened earlier. We wish it had been much earlier because we wouldn't be in this position, but this is where we are now. So that being said, the spring is our hopeful date to have that funding in place. But if not, because of construction and the way that the bidding calendar and construction calendar works, we're looking at the fall of next year
For construction to begin.
for the bidding.
For bidding. If we don't have the funds to bid it in March or early April, likely we'll have to wait until this fall state bond, and we'll have to go out to bid in November.
Which actually is an advantage to the bonding, right, Greg? Because
Well, from that perspective,
The interest rates
disadvantage
might
to
be
us.
different.
Possibly should.
So,
But it's a disadvantage to us because every month the costs go up. So
Yeah.
so as far as tonight goes, you don't need an answer for bonding.
No,
we don't need an answer for bonding at all. We need a vote for 800.
But also, this is, you know, you have, if your grant application comes in a month, and and you get the grant, then you need the rest of this to match as soon as possible to go to bid this spring,
Mhm.
right? But if you don't get that, then you're looking at a year.
potentially.
Well,
But we're looking at other sources of funding between now and then. We did raise, you know, close to $500,000 in 6 months. And
Jamie, I just want to make it clear. I want to go to the city council as soon as, if we vote tonight to fund the 878, I want to go to the city council as soon as possible. Why? I'm an advocate for this, and my voice will be silent after December 31st. It won't be silent in the city, but I won't have the influence I have on the council. I really, really want to try and help with this project while I'm still on the council. So it's personal, but I'm going to tell you that. So if you guys vote to support I'm going to say 878 if you vote that, present it to the city council, 250 from the budget, and the rest would be bonded at the treasurer's once the money is in place. Because we put the money into construction, we already put 1.25 in construction. We haven't touched it yet. It's still there. We'll just put 250 more in. And you don't get to use it until you're ready to go.
and it'll take a while for the city to spend the money on hand as we bill them. So you know how it works. We sign the contract on the promise that you're gonna give us a certain amount of money. That's fine. And anybody else who's given us a promise, like a grant or whatever. And then we pay the contractor and we send you that invoice, and you give us, in this case, 56% for the construction. So I'm gonna have to spend over 2 million before you run out of money.
The last time the city administration came together to talk about this, there was, when the city's bonding that construction funds, there was some discussion, and it's outside of my area of expertise, so I really can't like clearly say why, but it was that the city has to have all of the funds in place in order for you to go out to bid. And that includes the bonded funds and that includes the promised funds. And it gets more complicated with the fiscal, like who's in charge, whether it's city space or the city that's doing the bid.
All I can
And
say,
so-
Jamie, you're right, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing. We're gonna approve the funds, and then the city council approve the funds, and then there's a big negotiation on how that is gonna happen. If the law says, or the city says, we want all the
You'll do
money,
what you have to, the city's gonna need to do what it has to do.
that's what I'm
But
saying.
when you build a
They have-
school, you don't have the bonds in place when you.
Like I said, I don't really, the conversations happened around me and I tried to pick up as much as I could. I wasn't able to fully understand all of it because it's outside of my.
But
So
I
can I
think-
just ask a question? I think you bring up a great point in terms of there's money already there. We'd be drawing down from that. How many months of construction would that cover? Actually have to bond? Is
Well-
it 3 months, 6 months?
Hold on, this is maybe a 12-month project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you do it simply, I suppose, and front loaded a bit, it would take us 6 months to spend 2/3 of it.
Okay,
So if let's say it's a 3 million, just for a number, let's say it's 3 million, it'll take us probably 6-7 months to spend 2 of it.
And if the city will want to bond as late as they can or whenever the interests are good. So I'm of the opinion that once it's voted and everything's okay, they're gonna let the bid go because they're gonna fund it either later or bonding.
that's the point that I was trying to get to, is that, right, that it could be a year before anything actually has to be bonded.
And you'll know what it's gonna cost and we can put it in the budget for 25.
Saying rates are gonna drop. What?
I don't have a crystal ball.
I was gonna ask, I was gonna say,
I
Greg, what-
hear,
I'm an accountant. I look backwards. Economists look forward, accountants look backwards. So, yeah, and I mean, one other piece of this is my concern long run with, phase 2, phase 3. I mean, I hear what you're saying as far as maybe the politics of the moment are such that, a non-bonded amount might not fly, or you think that would be a tough ask, but bonding twice might be a lot to ask for the public, for a new administration. So a small bond now, even, and then coming back for a rebonding for phase 3. I just want us to think about whether that is.
They did it with the school. They went out there.
Is that the way, right? Like,
so you bond first for the first 600,000, and then you'd have to go and do a second bond for the phase 3 for the remainder of whatever's left in the 2 million. Is that
I
what
guess I'm
would
just like,
happen?
if what we're talking about is in the public's mind and in memory and so forth, it's already been bonded. Even if it was a small bond,
Sure.
a bond is a bond is a bond in the public's mind.
They're worried about potholes anyway.
Well, let me say something to that.
So I'm not the expert on politics or public opinion or whatever, but I just want you, just throwing that out there, that if there's a way around a mini bond on the front end so that we can actually bond larger when we need it for phase 3, I think we're gonna need that eventually. And so I don't know, you might be right that doing this without bonding in this moment is impossible or hard to do or whatever, but I'm just gonna throw that out there as long run, if we want this project to succeed.
When the school was approved for $60 million to bond, the new school, mayor bonded like 50. She rebonded at the end. Nobody ever asked about why are we bonding more or anything. It's the approval of the original amount and how they go about bonding it when they need to. So I disagree that there's gonna be some concern about rebonding. I'll say it again. You need 600, if we do the 250, you need $630,000. If you don't bond it, you're not getting it.
Can I speak to that? So if you draw down the historic preservation account, there's 121,000 in there.
I don't want to.
And so, and then that would leave 500,000 remaining, which would leave 446,000 roughly in the undesignated account for the rest of the fiscal year.
it kills the clock there. The clock needs $100,000 more, and I was gonna ask the historic commission to fund it. If you pull that out, then you can't do it.
But is
I don't
the clock ready to go? Is
No,
the clock
they
gonna be
won't
ready
be
to-
ready to go until it's all catch-22.
Right, but the clock's not gonna be ready to go until.
This is why the town of Amherst does it once a year,
Right.
CPA appropriate.
So it's gonna be next fiscal year, and there'll be another
That's a thought. I
another
mean,
120,000.
Greg, what she's saying is if we use the 120 that's in the account, that reduces the amount of bonding. So now we're budgeting 250 from that, 120 from historic preservation,
And then like 500.
and then what, 500 or whatever else is left out of bonding. So it's
Well,
less.
or from the undesignated.
I won't vote for that. And I'll say why. I know what the council's gonna say, you want us to spend more money on this project, we already approved 2 million, and we have all this housing stuff coming.
You can lower the bond. We can lower what was put into the bond by the.
Yeah, I wanna do that. I'm
Well,
okay
listen,
with
so,
it.
so if the bond amount's currently, it says 2 million, but it's really 1.75 because 250 extra already came out.
I'm
So-
saying the bond amount is, all right, whatever it is, if we take 500,000 out of it, it has to be bonded. We're not gonna appropriate new funds. I can't vote for that. If that's the choice of this committee, it's gonna fail. I won't vote for it.
It'll fail at council.
It'll vote right tonight, it'll fail. I can't do that.
Well, you're 1 vote out of 5. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying.
You need 5 votes. But the point I'm trying to make is I know what the council will do. Asking for $500,000 when there's all this housing coming our way. I know it's coming our way. It was pulled off the agenda of Main Street. I just know that it's gonna be extremely difficult. The bonding's already been approved. Okay, I would agree. I'd love to do cash. I don't want to bond, but I don't know how that's gonna happen. So I'm conflicting with myself here. So don't ask me to make that choice, please. I will agree with the 120 that Jamie just brought up from historic preservation. That reduces the amount of bonding necessary to get to 878. But I can't do 500,000 or whatever it is in new cash. I don't know where that. That's just me.
The CPA
That's my
has it,
opinion.
have it in cash right now.
Yeah, but there's other projects coming our way.
We still have a long way in the fiscal year.
I know.
Yes, this is
Is-
only
is-
September.
Is part of where I'm feeling. It's only September,
That's my point.
So, meaning what?
meaning we're not gonna see another boost of CPA funds until 6:30,
You're
right?
talking about the undesignated.
I'm talking about undesignated. I'm talking about, I mean, all of them will get repopulated at the beginning of the fiscal
Yeah,
year,
but there's
right?
$900,000 in undesignated, take 500 out, there's only 400 left.
I know, I understand. And I mean, the other piece too is, according to the coalition, CPA coalition emails, there's less money coming into the CPA.
Yeah, the match
Because
isn't coming.
The matches aren't coming because the housing market is not as active as it was because interest rates are so high is that there's not as many
It's all
people
the
buying
catch
houses.
22.
And so therefore, the money that's coming from CPA is the D transfers.
Right.
And that pot of money is not getting as filled as it used to be. So we're not gonna see a huge match, I don't think, coming to CPA in the coming years until the housing market kind of stabilizes a little bit.
Or, well, yeah, or housing valuations.
That is not to say,
Continue to fly.
just to be up, just to say this, that other funds from the city, maybe they'll happen and we won't have to bond. The only way the CPA can bond, project this is to bond it. What is it, 500, Jamie, in your math now, 250, 120, that's
I mean, I was suggesting
270.
that it all, I mean, if the CPA could fund it entirely out of cash, but
I
I'm
don't
just,
want
I'm
it.
just, I'm not making the, like, whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm saying it is possible to be done. And then
Out
that
of the
leaves,
980.
and then that leaves the CPA committee to have other discussions later about how to fund other projects when those projects come in.
I mean, those projects could be bonded too.
I'm
Just
I'm
saying.
sorry, I don't wanna have to fight for this kind of money at the city council level. One person said historic
Yeah, I understand.
preservation is
Awful quiet.
privilege, so I'm not,
So I'm just gonna listen, but, regardless of where phase 3 is going, because the whole world could change again, and interest rates could be 22% in 5 years. We won't be able to bond that. I think we've got to get through phase 2 and get that done. And not forget about phase 3, but phase two has to get done, or there is not a phase three anyways. If we wait 2 years, it'll be.
You'll add another million to this.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan. From the Peanut Gallery.
Tech is on the city space committee. Introducing you.
I just want to say something because what you're not hearing about is the advocacy that the board is doing. And we recently invited about 10 members from the Smith College Museum of Art and gave a tour of the building, and they were all very, very excited about this project. And they, in turn, are spreading the word. We have another invitation out to historic Deerfield, and unfortunately, we had to cancel one, but we're rescheduling that moment because we're trying to find these collaborations. Same thing with faculty at UMass who have actually volunteered to give us free time to get this project going. And so I know there's a lot of pessimism going on right now. And Greg, I know you're pessimistic, but I'm optimistic. And I can counterbalance your opinion with saying, well, you don't know who's going to donate several thousand in the next couple of years. And so I just want to leave this meeting that the board is doing their work. We're not only relying on the CPA, we're really, really reaching out as much as we can. And I want you to know that, okay?
Thank you. And I never questioned that personally. That's not a question. I don't think anybody on this committee ever questioned that.
I don't want to speak for the room, but I mean, I really do kind of think we're generally in support of funding this. For me, it really is more a question of how. I just wanted to, I appreciate your laying it out there that there is cash available and what that would mean. I'm not as familiar with the politics, and certainly your preference I'm hearing, but I do have some reservations about a little mini bond to get us through, knowing that we're going to do something.
I just don't have another way forward that I think will pass the council.
There is an argument, and I just want to throw this out there, like, this is an interest-free funding.
Mm-hmm.
We are paying more to bond in a high interest rate environment than we would if we pulled that money from existing sources.
Well, that's if the bond was now, right? If the bond doesn't happen for a year because everything else, it might be better.
It might be better.
The
Might be the key word
the
there.
last time that we tried to bond for a year out from now, then there was this whole rigmarole about coming back and asking for additional funds. Well, if it's a year out from now, there'll be another $250,000 in retained city match if CPA votes that into the budget.
We could
And so,
possibly reduce the need for a bond. That's what she's saying.
I think, yeah.
And all I'd say to the city council is how the treasurer and city space negotiate how we use the money that you're approving, the 878, is between them.
I think need a timeline or something. I'm having a hard time kind of like,
A timeline of how it's approved.
or just like,
Let me
the
try- let me try
flow
to-
of the funds,
Let me
like,
try to give that.
Okay.
So let's assume that we're out to bid documents in February, out to bid in March. Award a construction contract in the best of times in April. Construction probably would start in 30 days. First part of it's gonna be a ramp, so there'll be some slow
it'll be
startup.
site work. Yeah,
There'll be some
mobilization,
site work.
site work, that kind of stuff, yeah.
So maybe the first month's invoice won't be catastrophic. Second one, starting then, third, fourth, they're gonna be heavy, construction's done,
Yep.
pouring concrete. So that brings us, we'll probably, I think I said 5 months or so before we exhaust your money, 5 or 6 maybe.
Yep.
So if that's, so that's
October.
October.
So if we do not bond, and this is up to the new CPA committee, which I hope most of you are on. If you don't bond until you absolutely need to, maybe the money that we budget, you guys budget for 25, the 250 we've put aside, can reduce that bond again.
Or this is kind of why I wanted the timeline, or that 250 is coming in on July 1st.
Right.
That 250 can be immediately used and added. We already have 1.5 here. You could add another 250. That gives you 1.7. That would, give you maybe another month maybe of paying bills. I'm just trying to use that money as soon as possible, as soon as it hits the account to prevent bonding.
If I had the authority, I would say, don't bond until you absolutely have to, and let's see if there's other funds that come in.
Right, and
That's what I would tell the treasurer. I don't know how that works, but.
and the mayor would, in this timeline, the mayor's gonna be developing a budget in May or, in March. Could very well be that they decide to maybe talk to the CPA about, hey, that 250, why don't we just put it in the expense account? And reduce the amount we end up having to borrow. Because you won't be borrowing money until into fiscal 25,
Well, I hope the next person on the fine.
if they borrow it.
And there's no ARPA money, like you've asked for ARPA money from and there's nothing, she won't.
We
Because-
have received our.
No, I know. I'm just,
Yeah.
again, I'm thinking of timing, like it has to be expended or it has to be allocated by 2024. If she
Right.
gets to her budget season at 2024 and she hasn't allocated all of her ARPA money, it isn't already to other projects. I have no idea what
Well,
her plan is.
and
Then maybe that could be, again, I'm just trying to creatively think of ways you can slip in there and maybe get additional money.
Well-
It's unclear of what ARPA funding is left.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And the other thing you should know, there's huge projects out there that have to be funded. There's the whole Main Street redo, that's 1 million. We haven't touched that yet. And, we have,
Is that ARPA funded?
I don't know if she could use it. But all I'm saying is there's lots of places for money in the city beyond infrastructure improvement mostly. You're gonna talk about something that we're gonna look at the planning board has lots of projects on the docket.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I've been
Please.
sitting here wondering what to say other than I'm Bond, James Bond. That Main Street project is really tied into the success of Old Town Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, if you redo that street and that's a crumbling piece of historic past standing there, reminding you that it's historic past and it's not used. Why redo Main Street? I mean, it's really part of it. So if there's some way that, again, when that goes out to bid, that it also includes,
We talked about that when
Phase
we
3.
talked about funding the library and getting the new library across the street in the Bank of America. It was all part of that whole discussion.
yeah.
And City Space having their building in the meantime. I'd like to say that it's getting late.
Yeah.
Jay, do you have anything? Because you haven't really said much except,
Do we have to decide on the funding method to make a decision to move forward?
Yes.
Or,
we do because I have to get it to the city
Okay.
council. I'm doing this because I'm an advocate. I want to get it done before December.
Okay.
Yes, Jamie.
You're still waiting a month to hear about your bond or your grant. Does the decision need to be made tonight?
Well, that is only for that $630,000,
That
right?
is
It
for
has
the
nothing to do
additional
with the
funding.
CPA. It's for their part of the match, the
Right.
grant.
And also, if we say the CPA has
But-
funded the 878, that's a kind of a donation kind of thing where they can say, we've got CPA money, we need some money to help match that.
Your funding time, if you get the grant from, I don't know, and the 630, and all you need is the remaining CPA to go out to bid, the soonest you'd be going out to bid would still be March. So that's still plenty of time for the city to move this appropriation.
Right. If we
If,
don't-
if the decision's weighted, or if you don't get that grant, then you're doing it a lot of little grants, and that's gonna take longer to raise.
Not necessarily, it depends.
Well, and also, if we give them the funds and it's in place, again, they can say, we have this money, we need to match it. I'm sorry, I want to vote this evening. I'm the chair of this committee and I'm going to ask for a vote. If the rest of the committee decides to hold off, okay, but I'm going to ask for a vote.
My preference is to not vote this evening. If we can wait a month given the size and complexity of this issue, my preference is to be able to sit with this. And I mean, we've gone over a lot of ground and we have only a partial committee. So I don't really know what waiting a month does, but if there's any ability to wait for a month to vote on this, I think it would benefit the committee and just benefit the discussion and benefit the city.
Well, what bothers me about that, Greg, is not that you make good points, is that there's other members of the committee not here. Do we have to do this all over again for them? I'm sorry, that's disappointing. I'm gonna tell them, watch the video. But that's not fair to all of you that spent the time tonight. So
The importance of the project trumps our, I mean, like, I'm here to serve, right? Like,
Okay.
this is a long meeting. I can go in for another long meeting, but I mean, I'm just speaking as one person. I think a full committee, not that everybody has to be here in order to vote, but I think it's definitely helpful.
well, there's no guarantee we'll have a full committee.
Give me a little bit of information of why it has to be tonight. We typically, just of the history here, we often present and not vote in the same meeting. We've accelerated that in recent years. But for something that is large and complex,
Okay.
I just feel like it's a little rushed.
Okay, we can wait. CPA committee meeting's on the 19th.
19th of October.
How many of you will be here?
I will not.
See?
It's okay. You don't need me.
Oh, yeah, I think we do, but
No,
why can't-
I'll be begging for my own projects in Amherst, so I will not be here.
I mean, we can wait and get some more committee members here. I am gonna send an email out to the members that are missing. Why didn't you tell us you weren't here? This is disappointing. But okay. Michael.
Will that allow enough time for it to get through city council? and
Yeah,
people
if it's,
vote
if
while
we
you're
vote
still-
on it on the 19th, we'll have to get it to the city council.
It'll be mid-November. before we get on there.
November 1st meeting,
Yeah, it's a
we can
mid-November.
get
they
that,
approve.
and then the second meeting in November, I will set it for, but still,
You don't take Thanksgiving off, but you have the first meeting in December, even if you did take Thanksgiving.
no, it'd be the 15th, November 15th, this final approval. Because November 1st is the first
Oh,
council
first
meeting.
meeting.
October 19th, we vote in this committee, goes to finance, goes to the council, move to finance, big discussion in finance, and then it comes to full council. Okay,
And it has to go through all of those steps because of this minor change? I mean, if we do the bonding thing, would it have to go through all of those?
it has to
steps?
go through all those steps.
No
because
matter
I want to
what.
be totally transparent about what's happening. And even if we said, okay, well, all we're gonna do is bond it, because there's council approval of bonding already, we're not gonna ask for any other money. If you transfer money, you have to get council approval anyway, so that 250 has to be approved by the council. The 120 from historic
I was
preservation,
gonna say, what, 250?
the
It's
250
in
that's in
retained
the
to be
budget.
matched.
Remember this,
Oh, we're gonna use that
Set
too.
aside.
and that has to go. Okay, I'm sorry.
Confused.
I know, that's why I didn't want to vote on it, because honestly, I'm getting confused about that.
So would it be
Uh,
helpful if I put together my financing thoughts for the next meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
Like a little outline.
If we're gonna wait, I think we should also have a meeting with the auditor or the treasurer.
I don't wanna go
Before
there.
the
No,
next
no, no, no,
meeting.
no.
Well, because
Can we do that afterwards?
I would rather wait.
Because that's more about, you know,
The function
the
of,
logistics of
Yeah.
the project bidding and the construction, you know, and how that might play out together. It's not about the financing.
the treasurer is the one who issues the bond.
Mhm.
The city council is the one who approves it and Authorizes it? the treasurer works and at whatever speed that the treasurer wants to work at.
so,
And
but
so-
we already have this 2 million. It's not like we're asking for a new bond. I guess that's part of my confusion too, is that like, why? It just, it's the
Well,
municipal
we have-
process, man. Like,
Right,
it's
so if City Space came to the mayor and said, we want that $2 million, want to act on the $2 million bond, can they just bypass all of CPA right now?
I believe we can.
If the mayor-
According to the law, yes, but
So
if
maybe
you wanna
just
do that,
need
go
a
ahead. That just creates,
Maybe you just need a recommendation to the mayor
To do the whole thing out of bonding?
Yeah, it's no longer within my pay grade to make that decision, so I don't know.
That's why I think it'd be helpful to get some city treasurer and some folks who have like understanding of this process better than I do.
I understand the process quite well. There's a political process, which is what is gonna happen if this committee votes
We
on it.
don't need it.
If you wanna go around, I can't do that because the city council approved the bonding originally with the knowledge that it would be used for what is now phase 3. I will tell this, we have to tell the city council what's happening.
But that's
How
two
we-
different things. Just hear me out. I don't know whether you actually need a city council authorization. You certainly, and I would be a champion for that, should certainly inform them of what's happening, what decisions might be made by this committee. As far as, hey, we told you we were gonna wait for this, but now we're not going to. I just don't know that they need an actual vote. And that's, I think maybe where Jamie's thought might be helpful, is to go to the finance people in the city and say, do they need a vote?
I know they don't need a vote, but that's not the point. The point for me is, we asked this, the 2 million is for matching funds are supposed to come in to match that 2 million. You're not gonna give them, to bond $2 million now was based on other matching funds. Right now, what's on the table is 878. So the committee could say, you have that option, bond the whole thing. We don't even need council approval. I'll tell the council that's what's happening. We could vote on that this evening to ask the mayor, the treasurer, to fund it totally on bonding. That's the law. I don't recommend that. That's what you could do.
I mean, you don't recommend it from a political standpoint? Is that,
Yeah,
I mean, here's my thoughts. Construction industry is so crazy right now that this is not this is not really shocking in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, I
And I know that council likes to know what's going on, but I don't think it's a big ask to say to them, I know this is what we initially thought. This is the reality of the construction industry right now. And you're not gonna just see it with this project. You're gonna see it with every affordable housing project that's coming down the pipeline. I guarantee it.
oh, I know.
So, I understand the political side of it, but I also think that we need to be able to expedite a little bit if we can, in order to get the project moving. And I don't know if it's a matter of us showing up at a city council meeting as CPA members and saying, we've already approved this. It's a shift. I don't know if it's city space doing that, but it just seems like,
The CPA committee, because of the way this was presented to the full council, all the CPA committee needs to do is do a letter saying, we would like to approve the bonding of the new funds for phase 2 out of bonding. We're just informing the council we're doing that. And we're asking the treasurer to do that. You have that option, the whole thing, bonded. The only reason the city council has to be involved is if we use cash
right?
in any way.
So, but
So that is legal. The fact that we're telling them that that's what we're doing, to me, is transparency that's necessary, because if we have to go back to the council for more money, well, you didn't tell us you were doing that. You can't do that.
So
right?
again, I think an outline to some extent with some details of cash flow, but not really cash flow, but essentially here's the money that has been set aside. This is how long we think it's going to take to spend it down. This is when we think we're gonna need to pull the bond, so that the council understands the implications of that, but we've already approved this. The money is already there. So I guess I don't understand why I have to go to council, go to committee, go back to council.
Only if you ask for cash.
But we're
The
not asking for
250
cash because we've already,
Oh, the
that
250 and the 120, we are, so we don't bond as much. The point of not bonding as much is every time you bond, it costs them interest. But you have that option. If you want to avoid going to the city council for actual approval, you don't need it. We already have that $2 million approved. And as I said before, like the school, you bond when you need to bond.
right.
Now, I can put together those two funding scenarios for the next meeting, and we'll do it at the next meeting. Mike, if you can come up with a list of timeline or, you know, and I don't know who's
I mean,
doing it.
it doesn't
A
have to-
timeline of how,
The funds will
if the
flow.
grants come in and you bid to bid in March, when you think how the financing could go.
Construction
But
percentage of
I don't know about what Jamie brought up, the law about whether
projects.
whether they can go out to bid if they don't have their matching funds in. That's the question.
Mhm.
All I can say is I cannot approve new cash.
No, I get
I
that
won't
part.
do
I
that.
just am trying to avoid this council subcommittee back to council.
Well, the only way you can do it
nonsense,
is to
which
bond this
takes
entire amount, the 878, bond the whole thing.
Now,
You guys don't want to do that.
if I may,
Yeah.
it's to our advantage if you don't bond it all. Any new money you can put in is gonna leave more for the state. I'll tell you that, that's personal.
It's not new money, Mike. You have $2 million set aside. If we keep drawing down the cash we've set aside, it draws down that 2 million.
He's talking about new money and that we will have, they'll have more money left in that bond account.
If,
for
Okay.
the-
if city
Phase
council approves the $370,000 that's available in cash,
Mhm.
that means that the bond fund remaining when we're done with phase two is bigger by 370,000.
No,
Yeah, it does.
the bond authorization may be there, but we only approved 2 million. It's reduced by the amount we spent. The whole project was approved for what, 3.25, 3.5 million. We can't exceed that.
No, I think you either
Maybe I'm,
misunderstood me or I didn't explain it as precisely as I should. From my perspective, adding the 250 that's in the whole account and the 120 that's in historic is new money to the project that doesn't exist today. And so
money,
that's that much less you have to bond out of the 2 million.
exactly.
Leaves a larger amount at the end of to be applied to phase three.
I got you.
So it's to City Space's advantage for you to add money to the project, not allocate existing funds.
What I'm getting at is there's 3.5 million allocated to this project by the CPA. Bonding, cash. It's not gonna exceed that without a new vote of the council, and that's phase three.
And it would if you went to the council and asked for 250 and 120.
It's not gonna exceed. I'm not gonna present it that way. I'm gonna present it as it only reduces the amount we have to bond. But the reduction, the $2 million,
Okay,
do
that's fine.
you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I don't believe the math works, but perfectly fine.
I'm not speaking very clearly either. It's the $2 million that's set aside. Like you said, we've already spent some of it. What is it left now? One,
I mean, the authorization is still for 2 million, but we have the 250,000 that came into the budget this year reduced the million. The city would have 1 million for 2 million.
the authorization's there, but that means that we only granted 3.5 million, so that's my math. Anyway, we're going around in circles. Jess, I'm kind of wish you were here at the next meeting, but oh well.
Sorry.
But you guys are gonna be able to make it. I'll ask the other committee members to please watch this video. They'll have to come back and make a final vote on October 19th.
You should put a magic number in that they have to remember. Make sure they watch.
I think it'll be helpful for them and for us to spell it out. I mean, this is partly why I'm asking for more time, is because of just the complexity of and the different funding sources and so forth. So, I know,
Well,
I appreciate your ability to be flexible. I wouldn't ask if I didn't feel like it was the right thing for them.
no, I'm looking at the dates and timelines. As long as we can get a decision one way or the other before I leave. That's important to me.
Yep.
But that's personal. That's not fair to you guys. And there is only 5 members here, which is disappointing, but it'd be nice to have more voices here. Okay,
I'm going to Hawaii. What did you say the next meeting was?
19th of October.
Okay, I'll be back.
we can always go.
Gosh, take us. We'll have the meeting there.
Palm trees
Elon,
and
nice
stuff.
to see you again. I don't know as we need this at the next meeting, I don't want to go into all of the
No.
reasons we've had but like the nice presentation, Elon. I'm gonna say, I hope you watch the video, members, please
We have
understand.
this in a digital form.
It is, it's in
Yes.
the packet. It's, well, no, the one that's in the
It
packet.
was added, it was sent to me late. I added it at 5:30.
Okay, I didn't see it
Yeah.
earlier. Okay, all right.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg, thank you. I'm sorry, I was pushing for a vote, but that's just me. It was wrong. Should have, I understand. Okay?
Sure.
We have another item on the agenda.
Yes, we do.
Oh, my God. I'm out of here.
Thank you, City Space.
Amazing.
Can you, we have a planning board,
It's planning
assistant
department.
planner?
Planning department.
Planning department, yes, we don't want to,
And
planning board's a whole nother entity.
Yes.
they don't ask for money. Fortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll see you on the 19th.
Mhm. And Mike, if you can put together
I appreciate
Alon,
you.
actually,
Uh,
Alon is-
whoever,
We'll
somebody.
get it to you. Thank you.
Jamie, you're gonna explain what the
Yep.
planning department needs?
Okay, so just very briefly, the city applied for, the community development block grant funds for the new city neighborhood infrastructure improvement project, which includes, sewer reconstruction, water infrastructure, drainage, green infrastructure, a whole thing that's, being funded by the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Project, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program for Emerald Place, which is to stabilize the slope, which is eroding down into Lower Mill Pond. And then there are two parks in New City. The existing Parsons Street Playground, which consists of a swing set and a trash can.
That's the playground?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And then the parcel behind the old Parsons Street School, which is we're referring to as the Lincoln Street parcel, which since the city surplus the Parsons Street school, that parcel was split off and identified as future community parkland. And there's never been funds to develop it or anything like that. So in 2020, we got block grant funds to do a master planning infrastructure study of the neighborhood. From that study, we applied for and successfully received about $1 million in block grant funds for design development for all of the infrastructure pieces. And we are trying to get the parks included at the same time. That was through I didn't have enough time to get that piece of the application in, so we didn't get funded by the state for that. We got through the budget, FY24 state budget, we got $100,000 earmark from the state that got approved for design for the parks. And we're looking to CPA for $120,000 to fund the difference on the design for the playgrounds. So that's the very brief of it.
Do you have an application in the packet? I didn't.
Yes,
see it. It was, okay, I'm sorry, I was
You were focused on,
deep on city space to do my job.
And this is just for design, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's designed for the two parcels. One of the parcels, the Lincoln Street parcel is like an acre and a little over an acre. There have been some visioning, conceptual designs that have come out of it. But it's a large parcel that's essentially just a turnaround where the buses used to turn around. And it would need a lot of money to make it into a really nice neighborhood amenity.
So do you anticipate that the planning department will need funds for the actual construction from CPA in the future?
I mean, once we have the design, then we can go out to other funding sources for construction. There's park grants, but those require city matches, which would probably come from CPA. We possibly can get funding from the block grant program for some funding as well. But yeah, there'll be probably in 2 years, a request from the planning.
2 years, okay. It's not this year.
No, so I mean, we're right now at
But
design.
I mean, you didn't look at the packet, but the cost estimates, at least for the Lincoln Street parcel, $1.3 million.
Well,
And
yeah.
and it's $400,000 match from the park grant, so that leaves a pretty significant gap for the remainder of the funding.
The city has other sources of funding, but my only point is we have 980 some thousand in undesignated. This has to come out of a designated. We can't, there's no open space.
There's 5,000 left, right?
And then
Clean that out.
that's pending. It has to actually get returned.
Oh.
So,
Okay,
But anyway.
so we have zero.
So
We have-
now my point is, we have to keep this money in place because there's other projects coming our way, and the planning department may need another money, not this year though. But remember, that designated fund rolls over every year. So
right, but it also grows every year.
it grows. So next year, if you have construction grant, that's another subject. But you can't do that unless you have a design.
Correct.
I'm totally in favor. New City needs to get fixed. They need a playground that's better than a trash can and a swing set. So I don't have any other questions.
I'm 100% behind this project for many reasons. I used to live in New City and we used to frequent the one swing with the trash can. And
Fight for it.
and before that, before Parsons School was even rehabilitated, there was a very sad, nasty playground with graffiti all over it that was half melted, which is also the other one that we used. And that,
Up or down, right?
right, because there is not enough backyard space in this neighborhood and most of those houses, and so having open space is critical. This is the highest concentration of low, moderate income individuals. This used to be the old mill housing. This is housing built by the mills. So, you know, there is not enough open space in this neighborhood, and I think we've got open space plans that show that the walkability to open space in this neighborhood is very inferior to the rest of the city.
Totally
So,
on board, and
Yeah.
you'll not have any question that this will get done by the city council. I'm not worried about it.
We're also, just to put out there, we assumed that this would take 2 meetings to go through, so.
Does
if you-
anybody have a problem with what, not going through our rules and allowing this to be voted tonight?
this is just design money.
This is
Yeah,
just-
we're not, even though it's more, we have a rule that says if it's more than 40 some thousand, it has to come back to us. I don't think it does. If you guys want it to come back the next meeting, Greg?
We're not in a rush. We're going out to
This
RFP
is
and
less complicated.
we're going out to RFP and we won't be able to sign contracts until the funding's approved, but the RFP timeline would line up with the extended time. If it was voted at the October 19th meeting, mid-November is where we're in.
I would like to vote on it tonight because finance committee is gonna get inundated with free cash stuff and everything. The less we have to
No
do,
objection, that's fine.
if it's okay to vote on this tonight,
We'd
guys.
love to have it.
We know we're gonna be in favor of it. I don't think anybody's gonna question it.
So 100%.
So motion
Can
to
you-
approve 120,000 for, design work in New City.
Second,
We have a motion on the floor for 120,000. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for the quorum and thank you for that vote. I think New City needs it.
Absolutely.
And you need to come and tell the council of your history of the playgrounds. I thought that was good. Motion to adjourn? Somebody said
Aye,
second.
aye.
All in favor? Aye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.